The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz here along with my co-host Tony Palmeri. This is the last taping that we're doing for 2006 and we're very pleased to welcome Dan Rylance back to the show. He's been on, I guess once, maybe
Just
twice
once.
in the
Yeah.
past. Just
Thank you.
once?
Just once.
Just once.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to change that because as we start interviewing for the Common Council candidates and mayoral candidates, Dan's going to be filling Tony's chair over here. Since Tony's a candidate for city council, he's going to recuse himself from the interviews, and Dan has graciously said he'd step in. We've got some fun things planned
Absolutely,
for the candidates.
I'm looking forward to it, and
So,
big shoes to fill. So,
well,
yeah.
I'm not sure about that.
well, anyway, what we're going to do on this particular episode is just kind of recap some of the things that have happened locally and throughout the county and on a statewide basis. Even maybe getting into the national politics a little bit during the course of 2006. So that being said, welcome back, and
Thank you.
I look forward to working with you in the coming months. I guess we can start with the city, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I think probably, at least for myself, one of the biggest things during this last year was the whole Five Rivers thing. You know, it was on, and all of a sudden it was dead and never to be heard from again. So, what do you guys think was? What do you think about Five Rivers?
Well, you were part of we both were part of the group.
We were the five that were thrown out of the
Yeah.
city manager's office.
Were you
that
happy
night.
with the
I
way
was
that
working
turned
that
out?
night.
What more can you do other than protest and leave? You mean we should have stayed, you mean? Or
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think we made the right decision. And then you guys followed up with your letter, which ultimately, scored an advisory opinion from the Attorney General that it was an illegal meeting. So I think we did our part. I think that was, I don't want to be hauled out. I don't think. We made the point, I think.
How do you feel? We talked about this in a show with Chuck Williams and Ann Frisch, talking about open meetings and things like that. How do you feel about the fact that it takes 8 months, or at least in that case, it took 8 months for the Attorney General to say anything about this?
Well, first of all, the local person, Bill Lennon, should have gone forward with that, and he dumped it at the end because he said his sister worked for Remax and stuff, so
Right.
that screwed it up several months. But then it took a long time from the state. I used to email Lautenschlagers almost regularly on a weekly or bi-monthly basis. Could we please have the opinion? Never got an answer.
Is that right?
Never got an answer. So I was really surprised even that you could finally got an answer on your letter.
Well, I stayed on them. I mean, I
Did you?
was checking with them
Yeah.
every, I would say probably every 3 to 4 weeks. I would send him an email and say what's happening, and he was very gracious. This Paul Barnett, and he explained that they have I don't remember what it was, but I thought it was something like 7 investigators for the entire state, and I'm sure that they're getting hundreds of complaints on a variety of issues that they're dealing with, but still, it just seemed like it took a long time.
It did.
But I was grateful that we finally got something. And although I had said to Tony, I wasn't really surprised by the timing. I had said to him probably a month or so before the election, I said it wouldn't surprise me if we don't get an answer until right after the election. And sure enough, the day after the election, I think it was, this
exactly.
opinion came in the mail.
All right. So lots of people were opposed to the Five Rivers project, myself included. But now, once again, the development area sits vacant.
Right.
How do you think the city should proceed with something like that?
No more closed meetings when they get down to one person who's really going to make the deal, I think. And one disappointment with the opinion is that the opinion said that the council members who went into that illegal closed meeting could not be charged because they took the advice of the city attorney. I don't quite understand that. It seems to me they're the elected officials, they made the decision, in a court of law, they ought to have been charged with a misdemeanor for violating the open meetings law.
Yeah.
And I must be a quirk in the Wisconsin law or something, but that surprised me.
Yeah, it sounds like the Wisconsin law situates elected officials as people who can't make their own decisions.
Right.
'Cause essentially, what the way it was explained to us was, if the city attorney tells you something and you do it, then you're clear.
Yeah. What a great deal.
Yeah.
And the city attorney is clear because, hey, it's his opinion.
Right.
So why have the law at all?
Yeah.
Because basically it's a toothless tiger.
I think the public loses either way on that.
Yep, exactly.
Well, we had another tough budget year at the city.
Right.
And I know you in the past have talked about the fact that the city doesn't have a budget committee.
Right.
You probably still feel that way. That's a problem.
Absolutely.
Isn't it?
Although the council member said this time around it was really a better process than before, I thought it was really a poor process.
Why?
I think that they should have a budget committee that ought to come back to the council 3 months before and say, here's a budget resolution, just like they do in the federal level, and say, here are the things we will accept and here are the things we will not accept. And then the council can apply that general specific resolution to everything that they look at. Otherwise, they're just picking, they're going through pages, one line, they ask a question. They have no game plan for the process. And so I think a budget resolution would tie them up, force them to make a decision, and then they can give it to the city manager and say, here is our budget resolution for this year budget. Please fit the budget into what we want.
Well, much of the year was tied up, much of 2006, with this garbage fee,
Right,
which citizens rose up
right.
and got a referendum on the ballot and defeated it. Do you ever see something like that coming back again? Did the citizens soundly say to City Hall, no garbage fee?
Well, the resolution or the referendum that passed was only for 2007.
Right.
So it's conceivable that the city would be down another $1 million next year. I hope they wouldn't do that, but they'll be looking. Look, all these organizations, city, county, school board, are all hurting for money.
Yeah.
They've got to come up with new sources of revenue. And the city's going to be in that situation next year, just like they were this year.
Let's go back to the budget process for just a second here, Dan. Besides a budget committee, obviously their budget process started earlier this year.
Right.
Did you think that was fruitful in the long run?
It was, except the early budget forecast we got, I thought the city was going to cease to exist.
Yeah.
After hearing the city manager cry for 3 hours on that night, I thought, my God, the city, there's going to be no library. The police is going to be down 9 positions. And then when they come in with one a couple months later, it's like, boy, talk about calling the sky falling. This is, so to me, that first round, I think they lost a lot of credibility by overemphasizing the pain of 3%. As it turned out, there was pain, I don't mean that, but it wasn't anywhere near what they said the first round.
Although they keep saying it was an exercise,
I understand.
They keep stressing that. I guess, one of the drawbacks that I see, and so certainly when I ran for council, I was a proponent of starting the budget process
Right.
earlier too. I think that's good, but one of the drawbacks that I think we all saw from that is you don't know until so much later on what the state's going to be giving you.
Fully understandable.
And so, in the long run, does it really make sense to start this whole process early?
But if you had a committee of 5, say the mayor and a couple council members and the budget director and one other person, you had monthly meetings, you could kind of begin to draft and gather the areas that are known as opposed to the revenue sharing, which isn't known in some of them. You could come better prepared, I think, 3 or 4 months.
Sure.
That's
What
all.
do you think of this idea that's been floated by some members of the council to do a complete audit of our city operations that would require finding out what they're doing in other cities? My understanding is that this would be like at least $100,000 proposition to do this.
For the full-blown one.
For the full-blown one.
Right.
The
And then are you
smaller one that's
Yeah.
more, it's not as finely tuned. It's just kind of a broader type scale. It's like 30,000, I think, isn't
Yeah.
it?
First of all, is that still on the table?
Oh, yeah.
It is?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think about something like that?
Well, I think the November election did 2 things. The city voters said to Wolnick on the garbage fee and on his proposal to increase the mill levy, which was his way of getting money even knowing that the garbage tax was going to fail, was 2 votes of no confidence for the fiscal management of this city by the city manager form of government.
Yeah.
Clearly. And so
Resounding.
what,
Yeah.
80 to 20? I don't know what but they weren't anywhere
Not even close.
No. And so, I think that's pretty strong. That's the way I would read it. That I think the city manager did very poorly, and the voters, really voted him down on two of his ideas.
You think if there was another movement afoot to change the form of government, to bring back an elected mayor with executive power, and that would be the major change.
You're talking a full-time mayor?
A full-time
Yeah.
mayor, like they have in Appleton
Yeah.
and Menasha. You think that would have a shot this time?
I don't know. If they do it, they should only wait till 2008 when the high turnout in November, where a high percentage of voters. I don't think it would work on a small turnout election.
Yeah.
But
Because the feeling I'm getting is that people are getting more and more frustrated
Yeah.
with the system that we have in place.
it's a lot of work, as you probably know from.
To do a referendum drive?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have it organized and have people that would do it. But
Yeah.
I think the first nail on that is just what I said, that I think, there's 2 votes of no confidence in November for the city manager.
Well, the local media doesn't seem to be as solidly behind
Right.
this city manager form of government as they used to be. On the other hand, the local media is not as strong as it once was.
Right.
So I don't know what kind of an effect that would have.
It would take real leadership, I think.
Yeah.
But, and if they would do it, my recommendation would be to do the presidential election of 2008.
What about this proposal that was floated during 2006 to keep the system that we have, but give our current mayor
Right.
veto power?
Ridiculous.
Why?
The mayor is not an executive in this system. He's just one of 7. So if you gave veto power to one member of the legislature,
Yeah.
he would have dictatorial power over the other. And that's why I assume those guys wanted that. They wanted dictatorial. Absolutely not.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what McHugh and Esslinger wanted.
Yeah, yeah.
They were pushing so
Yeah.
hard
Well,
for it.
the mayor would end up getting 3 votes on something.
Yeah.
An initial vote, then a veto, and then a vote to sustain his own veto. That's not, you can't have that.
No. And now, if the mayor was an executive with full executive power and was separate from the council, then you could make an argument maybe for veto. But he's just the parliamentary. He's just a council member with a different title of mayor.
What if you had a situation where even in our system, the current mayor only votes in case of a tie? Would that be possible? Something like that?
Yeah, you could do that.
But it just sounds like you wouldn't support giving this current mayor in
Absolutely
this
not.
system any more power.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, Cheryl.
Okay. We also had a big brouhaha this last year with the Angel in the Park controversy. What were your thoughts on that?
Not real excited about it, I guess, either way. There is a tree at the end of the park walk towards the point in name of that person. I don't know whether people know that, but there is, and there's a little plaque that's already there, and that preceded the controversy about the angel.
It's in the name of which person?
Of the Fisher?
girl?
I think,
girl?
I think
Is it?
yeah, I think so. And there's more than one down there. But I don't know. There are more important issues than that. It just didn't hit my radar screen as one that I really got involved in, I guess.
Well, what about the mayor? Mayor Castle, after he was, threatened basically with a lawsuit against the city if this thing went through, he sat on the council dais and just said, well, as far as I'm concerned, let them sue if they want to sue.
It's a done deal.
That's pretty much a done deal. What do you think about a mayor that makes comments like that?
Probably not a wise thing to say.
Okay.
And I think probably that may have resulted in more opposition to that than if he wouldn't have said anything. I mean, that may have killed it.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, and I see both sides of this issue, but you talk about an angel being a religious icon, and yet by the same token, right now we've got celebration of lights going on down there, and you've got, mangers of, all over the place, I think, and baby Jesus, and nobody is making a stink about that. And maybe it's just because this is the season for that kind of thing, and it's a temporary display, but I mean, that is a religious thing as well, and it's in a public park.
I walk down there almost every day, and the bigger issue that didn't happen this summer was what happened to the Otter Street fishing pier. Big issue, and it just died. And it died because my understanding is DNR has never had the appeal hearing. And
Not
so,
yet. In fact, we just talked with Chuck Williams about
Yeah,
that a couple
so-
weeks ago, and he's still waiting, I think he said, for a date.
Incredible length of time. You're talking about your opinion on the open meetings law. I mean, that's been there a long time.
Well, what was also disappointing about that, whether a person supports the pier for Miller's Bay or doesn't, I'm hoping everyone can agree that we've got a broken system for getting to that point.
Right.
I mean, you shouldn't have a Parks Board vote on something on a Monday
Right.
and the City Council vote on it on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something patently absurd about that.
Right.
So I kept hoping that if there would be any silver lining out of that whole affair, it would be that we would at least try and reform that. And yet, they haven't budged on that, have they?
Well, I think that they unofficially or informally said that we'll never have something come before the Parks Board one day and the City Council the next.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's been anything formal that's come forward.
No.
No. And there's been nothing at all on how we put the membership of the committees together
No.
to make sure you don't have entrenched special interests
Right.
voting on things that they benefit from.
Right.
So that hasn't been addressed at all. In fact, I think
Right.
Mr. Stefani said everything's fine the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that kind of came out as a part of this was Meredith Shireman wanted to know how people are notified when there's things
right.
going into their parks. And she had specifically asked Dick Wollink, the city manager, to find out how other communities are doing it, you know, how they're deciding who should be notified about changes in the parks. And we asked her about that when she was here. I don't know, maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah.
I don't recall what she said, but there just seems to be an overwhelming lack of not following through on things. You know, that's something that I think we still need to see addressed in this city, is how people are notified.
Yeah. Do you think financially, as regards city politics, now that we've got a Democratic Governor Doyle, who has been claiming that he thinks cities should get more shared revenue, even though his own budgets have not been that great for it. We've got Democrats now controlling the state Senate. I think all of them who campaigned on greater assistance for cities. So do you think having Doyle as governor and the Democrats controlling the state Senate, they made some real inroads in the assembly.
Yes, close, yeah.
Is that going to be better for cities?
Not with a $1.6 billion deficit to start the next biennium budget, is it? I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. So you don't anticipate
Well,
more support coming from
I
Madison?
don't know any sugar daddies around that are going to give them $1.6 billion.
Well, in Madison, they've locked themselves into this no tax.
Yeah, that's not going to
position.
change.
Well, but we are going to get more and more fees,
Okay.
all right? The fee increases are going to continue. So they really are raising taxes. They're just calling it a different name.
Right. Well, we did that with the garbage fee thing. It was
Yeah,
the same
exactly.
formula.
And see, and that's the thing. I would rather see the tax than the fee, because at least the tax is
That's right.
tax deductible.
That's right.
See, isn't it, wouldn't
know-
you agree, a fee is only not a tax if when you impose the fee, you reduce taxes. But that's not what happens, is it?
No.
So when a fee, and when you end up paying additional monies because of this fee, then in my opinion, at that point it's a tax.
Yeah.
If it's being used to support the same service you were paying for,
Right.
right? In other words, for that $30 or $10 a month for the garbage fee, they weren't saying your other taxes will go down $10 a month.
No.
So in that case, in my opinion, it is another tax.
Well, and a fee is also not a tax if you can opt out of it. And with the garbage fee thing,
Yeah.
you weren't able to opt out of it.
And once
So-
the fee's established, it never goes down. It only goes up.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if the garbage thing would have stayed, I'll bet you, a candy cane that next year it'd be $15 a month, or in 2 years it'd be. I mean, because that's just the way it works.
Yeah. One thing that happened locally, not political necessarily, although I suppose somebody could make it political. I'm going to ask you this because you're a former newspaper editor. The Northwestern has made some real changes, not
have.
only in their political stances on certain issues, but in how they're delivering the news.
Right.
You can get all kinds of portions of the newspaper online now. They tried, Stu Rickman tried a blog, and that kind of didn't work. He pulled that down, but other reporters and department heads and so forth have blogs, and now they're going to be trying to roll out something new called a community newsroom.
Right.
I guess. What as a former newspaper man, what do you think about some of the changes that they're making? I mean, they really had to do something.
Yeah. I think the technological changes is probably a Gannett initiative. I think newspaper circulation all over the country is down. So my guess is that's just not a Northwestern initiative.
Right,
That's
right.
a corporate. As far as the editorial page, which I was an editorial page editor for 4 years, and we flirted with the citizen writers committee. And I had two problems. One is they never made deadlines,
And that's critical.
And two, yeah, you got a page you got to fill every day, and they're not.
Yeah.
Second is, some of the writing was really poor, and if you made changes, they really were upset. So my reading is that are they going to get rid of all op-ed columnists that nationally?
I'm not sure
I'm
exactly
not either.
what they're doing.
Yeah, but they have a host of people that they've listed that are going to write op-ed pieces for them. So my advice to Alex Hummel is, have a stick, because if you're waiting for these people to, if your paper is based totally on private citizens writing op-ed pieces, good luck. I think it's a good idea. I think it should be a blend. I don't think it ought to be all local and no national. But, they pay national people. They pay them 25, 30, or 40 bucks for every, and the citizen commentaries are not going to get paid at all. So,
Yeah.
But I think it opens up the paper. I've always said the editorial page is sort of the soul of the community, and I think that's great that people want to write op-ed pieces. Should strengthen the page.
Well, you're absolutely right about newspapers all over the country having to do something.
Right.
It isn't just the Northwestern.
Not at all.
Newspaper sales are down
Right.
all over the
Yeah.
place. And I was just reading today, even the Wall Street Journal is now entering the blogosphere. So blogs are becoming the way to go, and delivering news electronically is...
What are the
I would say-
consequences, Dan, of people not reading newspapers anymore? Are there any consequences for that?
Yeah, I think we become less informed. And if you're going to rely on the 24-hour news cycle, which is 90% spin, I think newspapers enhances television. It adds substance to, a superficial comment, and I think I think it's.
People are uninformed. I mean, not at UW Oshkosh. Before the semester ended, I had 2 classes, combined total of 50 students in 2 classes. For some reason, we were talking about Iran. All right, and before we got to talking about Iran, I mentioned Tehran, and I said, "Where is Tehran?" Out of 50 students, only 1 knew that it was the capital of Iran.
Yeah.
Now, does it make it easier for a president of the United States to go into countries when the population doesn't even know where they are? They're just these foreign other places somewhere. And I'm quite serious.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, how do you teach a class if that's the basis of your?
Well, it got me to thinking, I wonder what else I talk about that no one had, because often I look into the crowd of students and I get these mystified looks, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm assuming that people know things that they don't know.
Yeah.
Now, I think part of that is because of the lack of newspaper readership.
Oh, I think so too. Yeah.
So I think there are great consequences for this that we're not really sure of yet.
Yeah, but as much time as students spend online, I mean, you know that they're not just downloading music. I mean, that's part of what they're doing online probably, but my God, aren't they looking at blogs?
They
Aren't
are.
they,
But I think news blogs are probably the least popular out of blogs, and in news in general. And I know a lot of young people tell me that they realize it's partisan, that the news is very negative. They know there's going to be a lot of propaganda, a lot of opinions passed off as fact. And so many, rather than just then engage that system and try and fix it, will just reject the whole system.
Don't you think the blogs do attract a certain, type of person? It's not the average Joe type person. It's someone who has, an issue.
Well, speaking of blogs, how do you feel about this effort of corporate entities like Gannett trying to get into the blogosphere? I mean, blogs by their very nature were supposed to be the alternative to corporate reporting.
Yeah.
So when corporations then embrace them, that can't be a good thing, can it?
No, I think it's reality for them, though. You know, that they're losing. I mean, subscriptions are down, circulation is down, advertising is down. Newspapers is not, it's tough business right now. The company I work for, Knight Ridder, is gone.
Yeah, Knight Ridder's gone.
Broken up. That was the second largest newspaper operation in the United States.
And meanwhile, the television news, local television news, has got to be at its low point.
I don't think it's ever been at a high point.
No.
But,
No. But didn't the study come out of UW-Madison that the average broadcast was spending 36 seconds a night on the elections?
Right.
I mean, this is incredible. This is one of the most important election years we've had.
And how many minutes do they spend on political commercials that they made tons of money on?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But it seemed like, I guess, sports, weather, and advertisements are the 3 big ticket items on TV news. That's that. I mean, if you think about it, doesn't the FCC, Federal Communication Commission, say that in order to run a network, you've got to act in the public interest? How is it acting in the public interest if 36 seconds a night is on elections?
Well, I can tell you how they're acting in the public interest, because they do a lot of other public interest type things. They hold telethons, they hold other types of fundraising events. That's it, and those are the things, at least when I worked in radio, you actually quarterly had to fill out forms that you sent to the FCC, and you had to list all those public service related things that you did during that quarter. So that's probably how they're managing to keep their license fully intact.
Yeah. Want to move over to the school board?
Sure.
Now, the local school district, Dan, is in for some, at least the way they're talking, for some major changes. All right, including closing schools.
Right.
What's your view on the idea of closing schools locally?
I think it's overdue. I think the system has let things go too long, and I think whether they will get from point A to point B remains to be seen. But
why not fix schools instead of closing them?
what's the bill on that? And they say 13 million, something like that?
Yeah,
it's huge.
It's a bill, but doesn't there seem to be so many contradictory beliefs in our community? On the one hand, people love the concept of the neighborhood school.
Right.
On the other hand, we don't want to pay a dime to maintain our schools.
Right.
You can't have both, can you?
Right. It's true.
I mean, it seems to me if you really like the neighborhood school concept, which I think is a great concept, you better be ready to open your wallet. Otherwise, you're not going to have a neighbor. I mean, you don't honestly think that parents are going to sit back and watch schools close without kicking and screaming, are they?
I think the big issue, I think parents now, in 2006 in Oshkosh, want a decision. Rather than, we're maybe going to do it, we're not going to do it. I think they want to know, for the foreseeable future, where their kids will go to elementary school, where they'll go to middle school, and where. I think that's more important than fighting the specific shit. They want a decision.
Yeah, but they want someone else's school closed.
Well, of course. But ultimately, it's the booster clubs that are going to have a huge impact on this, particularly if they divide up, or they have all of the high school kids going to freshmen and sophomore, where you divide the allegiance between Oshkosh West and not. They are very powerful. Read the sport page almost every day. It's this booster club, basketball winning the tournament in another town, and they are very parent orientated and very powerful, and they will have a huge impact on what the final decision is in the school.
You've been involved at Webster Stanley Middle School, elementary school, with the newspaper.
I have, yeah.
The Webster Wave.
The Webster Wave.
What is that? Tell us about it.
It's a first elementary school newspaper in Wisconsin, now in its third year, published 4 times a year, promoted strongly by the editorial staff of the Oshkosh Northwestern, who work with the students on 4 Saturday mornings. It's printed by Gannett in Fond du Lac, and circulation is now up to 1,100, and it's distributed around town to the parents and to the students. It's become a reading vehicle for the students, a writing vehicle for the students to write into the paper.
What's the age group of students writing for the paper?
Mainly 4th and 5th graders.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe the Northwestern should get some of them as citizen journalists.
Yeah.
They like the idea, and so does the middle school, and so does Oshkosh North, because some of these kids will have 2 and 3 and 4 years of experience by the time they get to North, working on an elementary school newspaper and a middle school newspaper. So it's a good feeder system, just like basketball or something else, you know.
There's also an online version of it, right?
And Northwestern does that. Yeah. Without them, they would never have gone very far.
Right.
Because it's printed like a real newspaper. It's not a mimeographed or a photocopied newsletter in the principal's office. It's printed.
All right, we are going to have a school board race in 2007. Don Sween, retired teacher, has been on the board for 3 years.
Just one term, yeah.
He's not running again.
He's not running again.
You think he just got tired of always having his voting ability questioned, whether he can vote on things, all this kind of stuff?
Well, they picked on him quite a bit when he started, but nowhere near what they did when McHugh was on him picking on Teresa Thiel.
Yeah.
I mean, he got a much easier 3 years than she did, I think. But
you think Don is bailing at the right time? Because if they are going to make decisions to close schools, no elected official wants to vote on that.
Well, it's probably true. He probably doesn't want to vote against some of his former teacher friends that are in various schools or something.
And actually, if you think about it, all right, we're taping on December 21st.
Yep.
There have not been a lot of candidates stepping forward
No.
for school board.
No.
I think the citizens out there are reading the writing on the wall.
No, we should say that there will be one open seat,
Yeah.
done, and then Karen Bone is running again. So one incumbent running and one open seat for the 2 seats.
Okay.
So
And 4 candidates.
and 4 candidates. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, the choices are Dan Becker and Michelle Monty and John Daggett and Larry Didlow. So
As of now.
As of now.
As
yeah.
of now,
Yeah. How
yeah.
long do they have before?
January 3rd, I think? January
January
2nd?
2nd.
Okay.
January 2nd.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll see if more candidates get in the race.
Well,
Becker, as you know,
yeah.
he had served and he did not win re-election. He asked
Right.
for a recount.
Right.
You went down and actually watched that recount, didn't you?
I did. It went on for days.
Yeah.
I thought I was listening to Clarence Darrow or something in there because
Really?
this guy was pulling motions and objections out of his hat.
Becker was?
Yeah, on and on and on. You know, and well, you know, because he wanted to pull your voting area out of the
Yeah.
out of the recount so that he would win because there were more votes cast for him than there was Amy Lensheim.
He wanted all those votes not counted.
Yeah.
Because the bag wasn't signed properly.
Yeah.
Something
so
like that.
he, you know, I'm going to try to see if there's a transcript for that, Cheryl, before we and just see. But and you know, the total bill on that was, I think the lawyer got, I think the bill was like $19,000 or $21,000
Something like that.
Yeah,
for
it
that.
was about 20 grand,
Yeah.
19 or 20 grand.
Okay, but do you think so? Okay, I think Dan is a real bright guy.
Uh-huh.
I don't think he did himself any favors with that that process. But do you think that voters remember that kind of thing? Or is it just the political junkies like us that even know
that's
that
a good
took
question.
place?
Well, he certainly had a right to have a recount. I
Sure.
mean, no one denied
Oh,
that.
absolutely.
But his
Sure.
behavior at the recount seems to me is questionable.
Yeah.
Whether you're
But does
questioning-
that filter out to
I don't
the?
know.
To, yeah, we don't
Yeah,
know. We'll
yeah.
see.
He was sort of an obstructionist. I think that's fair on the board. That pretty negative on almost everything, and it would be interesting. It will be interesting what stand he will take on this school consolidation and change, because some of those decisions, as I understand it from listening to your interview with Mr. Traska here,
Yeah.
that some of those decisions are going to be made by January.
Exactly.
So we'll have to ask all those candidates, but certainly that will be an issue for whoever is going to win or lose during the April election.
Okay, Cheryl.
Just one other thing on the school district that I had, and it's not real political in nature, but it was a shock, I think, to read it, was the principal over at Oshkosh West, Tom Parker, resigning just very suddenly yesterday, and it following a week and a half after he'd gotten arrested for disorderly conduct. And this was very shocking and I think upsetting to a lot of people, because he'd been there for 4 years, and when he came here from Neenah, he'd been at Neenah High, I think, for 3 years. Was very well revered up there, and in fact, they thought it was a tremendous loss when he came down here. I mean, it's obviously Oshkosh West is going to keep functioning,
Sure.
But what did you think when you heard the news?
Quite honestly, it didn't surprise me. And the one of the radio stations this morning broke down what the disorderly charge was, and they labeled it a domestic issue.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So that was not in the paper this morning, but that was on the radio. I have friends that teach over at West, and there's some other issues that I really don't want to go into, but it did not totally surprise me.
Okay.
All right, county?
Yes.
County government. Mark Harris, the county executive, once again tried the
Half cent.
sales tax. He did get the board to vote on it this time, and they voted it down. Is it inevitable that we will get it at some point, or is this
They
dead?
can't rob the reserve for more than a year or two. That's what they basically did, right?
Yeah.
2 years in a row.
Yeah, so that they're going to run out of that. So yeah, I would think it'll be back. Particularly if shared revenue is not going to be much more, the mill restriction is still going to be there. They're all in the hurt bag. Absolutely.
I think Fond du Lac, Winnebago, and Outagamie are all playing this little game. Each one is waiting for the other one to do it first. So I think if Outagamie passed it, it would pass in Winnebago. But we're all kind of waiting for someone to do it first. You got to give Harris credit for at least taking a position on it.
And it was a straight shot. There was no. He laid it out. The pros and cons of it, and of course they did not want to cut anything. at some point, they're going to have to make some pain.
The thing is, nobody believes him, or few people believe him when he says that there will be a property tax cut. Because whenever, this game has been played in the state before, where they tell you raise this tax and this other one will go down. But he promises that would happen. Maybe it would in the first year, but then maybe not in following years.
Yeah, I'm always suspicious of that promise.
Yeah, exactly.
How much did you get written off on the lottery and your property tax this year? That was a big thing here, wasn't it, when it passed? And it's crumbs.
Do you think he's put his re-election chances in doubt because of this? Some people think that we're in an era now where a politician openly calling for a tax increase is a death sentence at the polls. You think so?
I argue the other way. Who would want his job?
Yeah.
Because the pain's going to be there in the next years anyway.
Well, and I will say this about Mark. He and I have disagreed on a lot of political issues, as you have with him. But, the sales tax thing, he actually put his money where his mouth was.
Yeah.
His own money was being spent for website maintenance, construction and maintenance, advertising. I don't know if he advertised in the newspaper, but he was running radio ads and possibly some TV. That's not cheap.
Well, I got to hand it to Mark. I had been very critical of him. I'm critical of all elected officials, but I never in my wildest dreams thought that Mark Harris would ever put himself in opposition to chambers of commerce, and he has. They've been opposed to him on this, and so got to give him credit, and because I know that the rumor has always been that he wants to run for Congress someday, and putting himself on the line as someone who supports a tax increase. As you know, since the Reagan years, all taxes are bad.
Right.
We can't even have a public discussion of taxes.
Someone once said that purposes of taxes was to support civilization. It would be nice if we could get back to that as whether we should raise taxes or not. Because, like we just said, it's if you raise the tax increase, people are just all over you.
Well, and what happens is you then can't have discussions about the finer points of taxation, like the fact that the group called the Institute for Wisconsin's Future came out with a study a few weeks ago, maybe you saw it,
I did.
Where they showed that in 2003, an overwhelming number of corporations in Wisconsin paid zero taxes. And they also found that if you want to just try and find out how much taxes that any company paid, it's almost impossible to get the data. So the mantra of all taxes are bad is fine, it's just that it makes it difficult even to get information on who's paying.
Yeah.
And that's not good, because I think most people would agree that what's happened in the last 20 years in Wisconsin, as corporate taxes have gone down, the slack has been made up by individual homeowners. And that's what I think people need to be aware of. And
It's too bad the Wisconsin Taxpayers Association, couldn't, because they would be hard time defending that.
Well, speaking of the Wisconsin Taxpayers Association, one thing they've never written much about is the amount of tax money we don't get in the state because of tax-exempt properties. And it come to find out that the Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance is in a tax-exempt property. And a $500,000 building or something that they pay no taxes on. So that's another area that should be looked at. Does every organization that provides a public service belong in a tax-exempt property? In Milwaukee a couple of years ago, the Norquist, before he left the mayor's position, tried to tax the local YMCA because they were actually running a bar inside the YMCA. They were basically competing with the private health clubs. So he tried to tax them, and then as a result of that, the state legislature ended up passing a special law for the YMCA. Can't tax them ever. I'm not saying YMCA should be taxed, but it is one of the areas that should be discussed. Who deserves tax exemption and who doesn't?
Wisconsin should have an elected tax commissioner.
The official person to throw darts at?
North Dakota has one, and
Really?
2 ex-tax commissioners are North Dakota's 2 U.S. senators.
What does the tax commissioner do?
He goes after people who are not paying their taxes. Remember when the catalogs started selling, through the internet, and they weren't paying local sales taxes in the individual states? North Dakota tax commissioner sued. Said, North Dakotans bought $18 million worth of catalog sales on the phone or over the internet. Where's our sales tax? So they were very popular because they they collected taxes and were very aggressive about it, and particularly at the corporate people.
Yeah, who's doing that in Wisconsin?
That's a good question.
Yeah, who's going after the tax deadbeats?
Who is it? Do we have a tax commissioner appointed?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
Not
we
that-
need
not
a tax commissioner.
Yeah. Well, the other big issue in the county, Dan, and as we speak, December 21st, this is very hot, the reduction of the board size.
Yep.
This has been going on for years. Greg Underheim, before he left office, and kind of like a parting shot, got through the legislature and the governor to sign a bill that allows citizens to put together a referendum to reduce the size of the county board. And it can be done once before the, in between the census periods.
Right.
But the way the law is written, it can be done by citizens, but it also can be done by the county board.
Right.
So it basically became like a race to the
race,
courthouse.
right.
What's your view on what's going on there?
I think the citizens were given a bad middle finger by the county board members, and I think
Yeah, because they brought the signatures in.
yeah, I think it was an absolute attempt to violate the will of the people, and I hope the judge will say a petition goes on the ballot.
Well, I heard the other day that it's going to be Judge Gritton that will make this decision, and we have no way of knowing
No.
how he views these kinds of issues.
Right. Now, the issue was the map, and my understanding is Tuesday night they voted for a map.
They did. They approved
So
the
that,
map.
but 6,000 citizens signing a petition. This is a country built on petitions and the right of the people to petition their governments, and it was such a sleazy, overt, strictly political move by them to go from 38 to 36.
But in order to side with the citizens, the judge will have to say that when the county board moved from 38 to 36, they really didn't reduce because they didn't have a map in place.
Right.
That's what he'll have to say.
Right.
Well, it's this. How do you define reducing the county board?
I don't know.
All right. But ultimately, this will get on a ballot. And my view was that in moving to 36 and thinking that they would short circuit the citizen drive,
Right.
the county board is only postponing the inevitable.
Right.
I mean, at some point, there is going to be a vote on this.
Yeah.
They may be able to ward it off until 2011
Right.
or whatnot, but there will be a vote on this.
Yeah. I thought you were pretty hard on the cut people on your show. And you're a great petition person.
Yeah.
You had the petition twice to immediate withdrawal of National Guard and Army reservists from Iraq. But you didn't have any specifics in there about how they should be withdrawn. But you were really after them saying, and they kept saying, no, the point of the initiative petition is only to vote yes or no on reducing it from 38 to 19. But you wouldn't let them off on that. You kept saying, well, how are we going to do this? And I thought that was a little disingenuous that because you're a standard bearer for petitions.
Well, I did sign their petition.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. But my point with them, I think, and I still believe this is, I want a compelling argument as to why cutting the board in half is a good idea. The supporters of the cut have just simply said the board's too large.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Okay.
Why is it? I mean, aren't we entitled? And I guess when it's on the ballot, we'd have this argument.
Sure.
Give us some hard evidence that reducing the county government will make it more efficient, less expensive, or what have you. I have not seen any arguments to that. In fact, whenever I've researched this topic, what I have personally found is that smaller county boards are less efficient and spend more money because they end up having to hire more private staff to do the work that the larger group did. Because as you know, they keep throwing out this canard that LA County is run with 5 supervisors. Well, yeah, they all make 6-figure salaries. They all have staffers that make probably more money than most university professors make. You're not saving a dime.
No.
Well, no, but nobody here would be full-time. I mean, you would just be handling, I think they said 8,000 people as opposed to 4,000 people. And I can't believe that a county board supervisor gets that many calls from constituents.
No, they don't.
Hell, a lot of people don't even know who their county board supervisor is or what county government does in a lot of cases.
But you're right. And this is why I would like to see this on the referendum, because then we could have this debate. And because since I've been in Winnebago County, we've never really had a good public debate about the benefits or shortcomings of reducing the county board. We've had people locked in positions without any argument.
But wouldn't you have that if it got on the ballot and then people would debate?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I do think that anyone pushing a referendum should be questioned very vigorously about it, as the war referendum folks have always been questioned vigorously about that. Bottom line is, you seem to think that the judge will decide.
Oh, I'm not going to predict what I just think petitions and 6,000 signatures carry a lot of weight in this country and should be considered seriously. Plus the overt attempt by them, clearly a political maneuver.
Here's what would be interesting.
what it
Here's
was.
what would be interesting. I have to believe that you're right. Most people perceive what the county board did in moving from 38 to 36 to be kind of like self-preservation, kind of sleazy in a way. So I have to believe that if CUT, the group, runs candidates in every district, they'd win. Now here's what I'd like to see. A group of supervisors come on the board and then basically vote to eliminate their own positions.
Yeah.
That's what I want. That's what I would love to see.
Yeah.
I'd love to see a county board now filled with CUT supporters that the first thing they do is vote their seats out of existence.
Well, I don't think Santa's going to deliver that.
Yeah, but I also think that what happens is once people get elected, they have a complete change of heart.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, they love talk of cutting seats,
Sure.
except when it's their seat.
Sure. Oh, hey, yeah. Just like reorganization of schools. Cut your school, but don't cut mine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, Donna Laurie was opposed
Yes.
to, she herself, and I haven't talked with Donna, I'm not beating up
Yeah,
on
yeah.
her, but here's the
good
thing,
point.
I mean, she was opposed to having the board reduced,
Right.
Right.
and now she was opposed to the map. She didn't
Yeah.
vote for the map, because she is one of 12 in 6 different districts that's going to face a challenger.
She would have to
Right.
run against Claude Thompson.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that would be a good
So-
race.
It would, yeah.
You know, I don't think the public benefits from having one of them out of
No,
office.
no.
They're both retired. They devote full-time hours to the board, but that's what cutting does. But I think that would be a classic race of
Yeah,
one for
yeah.
cutting the board, one against it.
I hope the judge, when he makes the decision, will say, dear legislature, this is a poorly written bill.
Yeah.
You really need to change it. I mean, it makes for poor law for me to have
Terrible law.
to pick one way or the other on this. Straighten it out, make it better.
Yeah, but not repeal it. I mean,
No,
you're not
no,
advocating
no,
for
but it
repeal.
needs to be changed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Clarify who gets to do this.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, other counties have done this too, where the county board has tried to reduce before the citizens got a
Right.
chance to do it. I think that happened in Waukesha County.
But with larger numbers of reduction than
Large
38
numbers
to
of-
36.
Right, yeah, exactly. But again, I do think that the county officials need to know it is inevitable that the citizens are going to vote on this at some point. So they might as well just do it now and get it out of the way, so to speak.
One of the things that we've just heard in the way of county news in the last couple of days, Dan, is our jail that is only 3 years old is already too small for the inmate population. We've got to expand it, and I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but we're going to hear a lot more about this in the coming months. I think it's a little weird, actually, that we have to already expand a jail that's only 3 years old.
I took a
Thoughts?
tour with my supervisor, Bill Wingren, spent 4 or 5 hours over there going through the jail before it was dedicated. And one of the questions I asked the sheriff was, are you ever going to house prisoners from out of state or other counties in this jail? He said, absolutely not. Now, one of the reasons he wants to expand it is because they're making $1 million on boarding prisoners from other counties. Now, I don't think that's a good reason why the taxpayers of Winnebago County should go for an expansion so that the sheriff can make money on housing out-of-county prisoners. Shouldn't be a moneymaker for the county.
No.
And that's part of the pain of wanting to go because they're full. Well, they're full because they have out-of-county prisoners there. And I don't think that's a very valid reason for going with an
No,
addition.
I agree with you
Yeah.
100%. Yet there probably will be a serious discussion of that in
I'm sure.
2007.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm sure at some point we'll have Sheriff Brooks on the show to talk about
Yeah,
it,
we
too.
should.
Yeah.
We should. Let's talk about the state assembly. We now have a Democrat, Gordon Hentz,
Right.
representing the 54th district for the first time in a long time, a Democrat. What do you anticipate out of that office? Anything differently?
I think it's too early to say, but clearly that was one of my big things for 2006, which was the end of the Underheim years,
Yeah.
which were 19 years, and his retirement brought a Democrat to his seat. Let's face it, Gordon will be in a minority. in the Assembly. Probably won't get a good committee assignment because he's in the minority and because he's a freshman. I hope he does some exchange with the district. That's one of the things he ran on. I hope he has some public forums. I hope he keeps maybe some letters to the paper. We know that the Northwestern will not follow him to Madison because they do not follow local legislators. You know, Carol Ressler gets her picture in the paper with her own press releases. But you know, I hope the Northwestern will do a better job on following Hentz because you know, he made some promises, and you know, I hope he does well. He was committed to this communication thing, and I think we should hold him to being a communicator.
You know what I think? One of the real untold stories in Oshkosh is the extent to which the Joe Paulus scandal really hurt the Republican Party here. The local, in my opinion, the local Republican Party has been in disarray since that Paulus scandal. Now, I'm sure the Republican leaders would deny that, but if you look at what that party has done locally compared to what it was, don't you notice that it's been weakened?
Yeah, Underheim's response, though, it was the Republican, the Democrat spin of the election that caused the Republican defeats, not incompetency by the local Winnebago County.
Well, it wasn't just the parties, but I just don't think the local party is what it once was at all.
Well,
and
for their candidate not to carry one voting area in Oshkosh certainly probably speaks to your point.
Yeah, something is going on there. Now, of course, Gordon probably will be challenged when he comes up for re-election.
He'll be most vulnerable at the end of his first
Yeah,
term.
that's when you're most vulnerable, aren't you?
On the other hand, he's running in a presidential year, which will make his race less conspicuous than it would have been this year.
Why do you think Democrats did so well in 2006?
Oh, I think the war, and I think Katrina.
That seemed to affect every race.
It just permeates this country, and I don't know how you can, throw it away. I mean, and you can, everyone says, well, what are the Democrats going to do for the next 2 years?
Yeah.
And my response is, what's a Republican in Congress going to do for the next 2 years? Does he want to run? I mean, look at all of their friends that lost. All these guys who went into this blind that they were going to go with Bush all the way. They woke up the next morning and they were beat. Gordon Smith in Oregon, a very moderate Republican senator, came out a week ago saying, we got to change course, fellas. Well, he's out. Guess what? There are 33 seats open in the U.S. Senate in 2008. 22 of them are Republicans. Only 11 Democrats are up for re-election. What are they going to do?
Yeah, Gordon Smith, the Republican, called the war criminal.
Yeah. They're we're talking about saving their own hide on redistricting.
Yeah.
What do you think if you're a U.S. Senator or a congressman? Are you going to go with the war for another 2 years? I don't think so.
Well, Bush sounds like he wants to.
Oh, I think so.
But here's what I don't understand. The public resoundingly said no to the war.
Right.
All right. Why? And Democrats come to power.
Right.
Why then does the incoming chair of the House Intelligence Committee, Mr. Reyes from California, he says he would support an increase in troops going to Iraq. Harry Reid, the Democratic Senate, as we speak, December 21st, the Senate Majority Leader now, Reid, has said that if the president wants to have a surge of troops into Iraq, he'd support that.
Senator Levin said the same thing.
What the hell are they doing?
Yeah.
The public has just told them,
Right.
we will support you to go against the war. Why are they supporting an increase in troops?
Okay, if you were Reid, would you support a cutoff in funds for the war?
I would.
Okay.
I would.
That's on the opposite side. That's a tough one for Democrats.
I mean, I think that the president has held out this canard that you're somehow supporting our troops by spending these outlandish sums of money. If the Congress says no to the purse strings, he'd have to stop the war, wouldn't he?
Yeah, they would. But that's a tough call for Democrats, just like it's a tough call for Republicans to continue supporting the war.
Well, I just don't see how the Democrats see it's in their interest to be anything other than a genuine opposition to the war at this point. The public, it seems like every week the number of people opposed to it, goes up.
Well, and not only the public, but the Iraq Study Group has, resoundingly said, you cannot stay the course. We've got to change what we're doing. And you've got to start bringing troops home. And just a week ago they said that, and now 1 week later, Bush is saying, got to send more troops over there. I mean, I don't understand his mindset here.
And he's probably going to get it too, because as we speak today, General Abazide resigned. Now, he was going to retire anyway, we heard.
Well, he's going to stay through March, isn't he?
But I don't know. But he's been opposed to the surge in troops.
Right.
So it looks like they're going to put someone in place that will support the president's idea.
I think David Gergen, former advisor to many presidents, said it best last week. He said, How do you explain in a country that everyone thinks we should get out of Iraq except the one person who unfortunately happens to be the President of the United States?
And the one who got us there.
Yeah.
Well, what I don't understand is what he sees we can accomplish at this point.
He doesn't define victory. He doesn't define democracy. Don't know what he's thinking. He's a strange person. I mean, he's an ideologue. I know that.
Yeah.
He sees the world in black and white. He's still talking about
well,
evil and good.
Back in 2003, when the invasion took place, I had said either on this show or back then commentary that he was basically rolling the dice on his presidency.
Oh, clearly.
And I think he rolled the dice and lost. His legacy now is a quagmire. I mean, that is his legacy, isn't it?
It is, as of we speak tonight. It's conceivable, unlikely, that in 10 or 20 years we could have a democratic Middle East. I don't think it would happen. But if that were to happen, his legacy would be different than what we would analyze it to be right now. That's his dream. I mean, that's the dream of the neocons, isn't it? That this whole area will be a democracy. That'll never happen. Like George Will said the other night, he said, do you think the president of Egypt wakes up in the morning and says, I think we ought to have democracy in Egypt. I think we ought to have a fair and free election. That ain't going to happen. Is that going to happen in Saudi Arabia?
Well, I don't think the war is just about oil. I don't buy those arguments. But on the other hand, we wouldn't be in the Middle East were it not for oil resources, correct?
I don't think so. No.
So, American domestic energy policy can have a lot to say about what happens out there in the next 20 years, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sure.
Well, we're down to just about a minute left, but real quickly, Joe Paulus, he finally, after a few years of being investigated by the state, he finally was charged and he made a plea sentence. He made a plea agreement, and I forget, did he get a couple more years on top of
2 more years
on top of the
charges,
nearly 5? Yeah. He's going to be serving it in a federal prison.
Right.
Do you feel that this is now an issue that we've seen closure on?
Well, my headline for tonight's show was the end of the Joe Paulus scandal, but that it could be revisited. I can't conceive of another chapter, but it has life. I know it's possible, but I think this is near the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Do we have time for one question for you people?
Yeah.
Very quick.
All right. Who would you nominate as the person or the persons of the year in Oshkosh for 2006?
Oh, wow.
I can't even think of a name in that short period of time.
Now,
I'd probably give Gordon the person of the year for being the first Democrat in 20 years to get elected to the Assembly.
my pick, and I had the question, obviously I got to have an answer, is the anonymous person or persons who gave the $1 million for the Pollock pool. 66,000 people were in there this summer. 66,000 from June, and a revenue of $330,000.
Yeah.
So, you know, whether it was one person or more persons, remain anonymous, but that would be my pick for person or persons of the year.
Excellent.
Actually, I did call the late, was it Jean Fisher? Jean Fisher was the woman with the angel? Sharon Fisher.
Sharon Fisher,
Yeah,
yeah.
In my column, I did name Sharon Fisher and Jean Gams as the citizens of the year
Yeah.
for their activism. We send our condolences out to Sharon's family.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks, Dan.
You're
It
welcome.
was
Thanks
a
for
lot
having
of
me.
fun. And Tony, thank you. And as always, thanks to you. And you know, as we bring 2006 to a close with this taping, thank you for all of your continued viewership during the course of the year, and thank you to all of the folks who were guests during the last year. This show would be nothing without viewers and guests, and without Tony and our crew. So thank you to everyone. Have a happy New Year, and we'll see you in 2007. Until then, keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.